March 16th is something of an ominous anniversary. There are dates in the calendar that celebrate good things. Wayne Gretzky sets the all-time NHL scoring record, or penicillin is invented, something like that. And then there are openly disastrous dates in history, like Pearl Harbor. But March 16th deserves our attention because it was on this date, back in 1935, that Adolf Hitler announced that Germany would violate the terms of the Treaty of Versailles when it came to German rearmament. And he didn't do this in an especially grandiose way. He announced that the army would stay roughly the size that Versailles permitted it to be, 100,000 men, but that 100,000 more men, conscripts, would be trained each year. And the Western powers did nothing. The politicians were practical people. They were confident they could manage this by talking. The public didn't want trouble. War is expensive and a brutal thing. Better to wait and delay it. And once Hitler sees that you don't really have the nerve to do anything, he takes another step. A couple of months later, he renames the Reichswehr the Wehrmacht and announces that in fact it's going to be a lot bigger, 36 divisions. And again, sure, maybe Versailles was too harsh. We don't want trouble. The Great Depression's on. Who are we to judge? Hitler will probably do himself it. He's kind of a kooky guy. Let's just not do anything or say anything. Now, a year after the introduction of conscription, with the army still not having reached the 36 division size that Hitler had announced in May of 1935, Germany remilitarizes the Rhineland. Hitler sends in troops. And the German generals, are petrified. They know perfectly well that the French have troops just across the border, and they could send them in a far superior force. They could sweep the Germans away. And if they'd done that, Hitler almost certainly would have fallen. But they didn't do anything. Hitler got away with it. The army kept expanding. Then you get to 1938, you get to the crisis over Czechoslovakia, and what do the politicians do? They smooth it over. Peace in our time. They make a deal. They sell out their ally. They avoid trouble. They don't upset the public. Then Hitler swallows the rest of Czechoslovakia. You know how the story goes from here. There's a great scene in Yes, Minister when Sir Humphrey Appleby is explaining the stages of an international crisis. And first, the Foreign Office says that nothing is happening. Then the Foreign Office says that something is happening, but it doesn't matter. Then they say something is happening, and it does matter, but there's nothing that we can do about it. And finally, they say something was happening, it did matter, and we could have done something, but now it's too late. Of course, in the case of World War II, what too late meant was, in fact, now we're plunged into a war on highly unfavorable terms against a nation that we could have stopped from embarking on an aggressive course at extremely low cost 4 or 5 years ago, facing a tyrannical dictator we could have had deposed by his own people by a fairly elementary show of force. So let's bear this in mind in dealing with foreign crises. Not everything that happens in the world is a remilitarization of the Rhineland or a violation of the Treaty of Versailles. Some things that look potentially ominous aren't. The world is a confused and troubled place. A lot of bad things are happening, many of which don't end up leading anywhere. But let us also remember that the calendar is littered with these dreadful anniversaries where Germany invades Poland or Paris falls to the Nazis, that kind of thing, precisely because it's also littered with these ominous anniversaries when something was beginning to show signs of trouble, when we could have done something if we'd been resolute, but instead we heeded the counsel of pragmatism and did nothing. Remember the scene at the beginning of Big Trouble in Little China when Egg Shen talks about how things always start small. Well, they do always start small. Sometimes they're so small we can't see. But let us not deceive ourselves. If we are seeing something that is ominous, let us be frank that it is ominous. Let us say publicly that it is ominous. Let us be honest about it. And if there is something that we can do at very low cost to prevent something ominous from becoming menacing, let us remember the consequences of not doing it on such dates as March 16th of 1935. If you're enjoying these commentaries, please go to my website, that's www.johnrobson.ca, and become a monthly supporter, $3, $5, $10, whatever you can manage to sustain me in my work. And keep watching The Rebel, subscribe to The Rebel, getting that news and commentary you just won't find anywhere else.